Hi, good evening, everyone. Okay, so I've recently been asked to do a quick tutorial of how I do some of my photo editing for aviation photos. So this is a just a very fast, quick tutorial to show you the step-by-step methods of how I normally go about doing photo editing for aviation photos. Now, of course, some of these techniques could also apply to other types of photo editing, portraits, landscapes, architecture, etc., etc. So, well, let's just jump straight into it then. Okay, so this is a photo of a Thai Airways A350-900 taken about 3 or 4 days ago on a perfectly sunny afternoon, so perfectly exposed kind of image. And normally for photo editing, I'll use two types of software. I'll be using Illustrator, sorry, not Illustrator. I'll be using Lightroom, and I'll be using Photoshop. Okay, so first step is always to import your photos into Lightroom, and of course always shoot in RAW. And once it's imported, go to the develop module. And okay, so first thing is to turn off the auto sharpening that always happens whenever I import Lightroom. I know there's a way to set it so that whenever it imports, it doesn't do this kind of presets, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So I'll just disable the sharpening here, and I'll enable profile corrections under lens corrections. Now this is quite important because it corrects any kind of lens distortions that comes with all kind of glass lenses, as well as fix any kind of vignetting effects created by lenses itself, which I think is really important if to activate this if you want to correct any kind of errors caused by lens distortion. Okay, so once those two steps are done, I would normally right click here and select edit in Photoshop. So I'll transfer the file to Photoshop, create a copy in TIFF file format, and voila, files in Photoshop. Okay, now I prefer to do the healing and some light editing here in Photoshop first because Photoshop is a bit more precise when it comes to doing these kind of corrections. So first things first, check whether the image is relatively sharp, which is okay. A bit noisy here, so what I would do is to duplicate a layer from the original and rename it as noise reduction. Okay, so this is my noise reduction layer. Now, there are different types of noise reduction software. Personally, I like to use Topaz Denoise because I kind of like how its results are, and there are of course different levels of function between RAW and JPEG file noise reduction. Now, of course, if you overdo it, the image will become too soft. So what I always recommend is you always start with the lightest first and see whether the results are okay for yourself. If not, just bring up one bar at a time and do some manual corrections here to create a relatively smooth image so that you get rid of all these artifacts, but it's still relatively sharp. In this case, I'll go with moderate and let it process for a while. Okay, and it's done. Wonderful. Okay, after noise reduction, let's zoom in to see if it's okay. Turn off the layer to check, and it seems fine. No significant detail was lost, which I think is okay, it's acceptable. Alright, so moving on. Okay, next thing I want to fix is dust spots. Yes, I know I should probably clean my lens once in a while. It's been a while actually, so sometimes I just get too lazy and I just use Photoshop for this kind of thing. But, well, as my teacher from school told me, if you can avoid using Photoshop to correct it, then avoid Photoshop in doing some corrections. Get rid of these plants here. Keep it clean. And okay, this works. Okay. Alright, so what I normally like to do next is to use Nik collection software from Google and do some color adjustments. Now, very basic, very simple touch-ups and color adjustment, nothing too severe. So select Color FX Pro and I've already done a preset for what kind of filters I like to use. So I can run through the basic settings for each of the combination of the filters. So I'll just select my preset, which is here. So my normal preset will utilize using white neutralizer, skylight filters, pro contrast. Actually, brilliance and warmth, I don't really use it that much, so I'm just going to turn it off in this case. Now, skylight filter is something that you use to adjust the green hue found in a lot of images. So I'll normally click that and maybe reduce the amount down to about 5% because right now it looks a bit too strong, too purplish. So yes, this works better. White neutralizer helps in turning the yellowish hue into something a bit more white neutral, more blue neutral, I think. Yep. See, it's a very, very subtle kind of feel, but you can get to see it. This one gotta go up a bit higher to 7. Yeah. And pro contrast just increase the contrasting layer, the contrasting effect of the image. So it brings out the highlights and the shadows. Reduce color contrast down to 9. Yeah, okay, this works. Carrying on. One thing I like about shooting the new A350 is well, it's really shiny and it's very reflective. So you get a lot of those hue highlights, which really brings out the three-dimensionality of the aircraft. Saving image. And yeah, here we go. Okay, it's a little bit too purple, which can be corrected again in Lightroom, so don't have to worry about that right now. The image is relatively sharp, so I'm not going to really apply a post-process sharpening, but just for tutorial's sake, I'm going to show you what I normally do of how I sharpen an image. Okay, so duplicate this layer, click sharpen, go to your channels, select the red channel, and duplicate it. And you see a red copy will appear. Click the red copy and deactivate the standard red channel. Okay, go to filter, stylize, and find the edges. So you see this rough outline, like artistic outline of the image. I'm using Mac, so use Command I, invert the layer around, and activate the curves using Command M, and slide the top part of the curve to the left, which will bring out even more detail, but a bit too much detail, so as you can start seeing there are a lot of noise artifacts. So click to the bottom, the darkness output, and swing it a bit to the right, gently so, to reduce these artifacts that you see. And yeah, so you get a rough outline of the aircraft, and basically all these lines are the ones that you're going to be sharpening in the process. Okay, so after you've done that, go to Others, Maximum, and increase the width of these lining by about 0.5 to 0.8 pixels. It depends on the image, but in this particular case, I think 0.5 pixels should be more than sufficient. Okay, after that, go to Gaussian blur and just give it a 0.8 blur, 0.8 pixel blur, sorry, and then go to noise, median, and set that to about 1 pixels. Median, great. All right, next step would be to select the outline. How do you do that? Simple. At the bottom of the channels panel, click this little outline square called Load Channels at Selection. Select that, and you see that the Select tool has already selected an outline. Okay, good. So after that, remember to activate your RGB channel. And go back to Layers, click your Sharpen layer, and just go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. Okay, this is just for tutorial's sake, so I'm just going to show you at about 125% sharpening. For D to deselect, zoom in. Okay, so basically this is what it does. This is a before, and this is the after. As you can see, it really sharpens out certain lines. But what it does is it over sharpens straight lines, like the warning line here and this kind of fuselage lining, and especially in billboards, as you can see, the lines here become jagged. So what we will normally do is activate the masking tool, fill it black to cover up the areas that you don't want. Activate the brush tool. So mine is set to color, but I don't know why. Activate the mask tool. Select the opposite color channel, which is white, and then just brush over the locations that you want to sharpen. So like the doors, the windows of the aircraft. Yes, all these areas that you like to sharpen, you could just brush over it and let the computer do the rest. Yeah, so you can try to get these detailings back into the aircraft without over sharpening stuff like letterings and straight lines. Right, so stuff like this you want to sharpen, stuff like this too. It's okay. So you can just manually select the areas that you want and just paint over it. So yeah, that's just a rough gauge. Oh, there's the logo here. Definitely want to sharpen that. This one too. Oh yes, this door, just a little bit. Okay. And yes, registration, definitely want to sharpen this. And yes, and this logo. And maybe these windows. Okay, so basically I'm not going to do the whole thing, so you get a rough idea of what this normally would do. You can see the difference between this area which I just sharpened and this area which I did not. Actually, this one don't really have to, so I'm just going to swap back to black and just paint it back again. Yep, so alright, zoom out. It's almost done, so right now I'm just going to get Command S to save the file and re-import it into Lightroom. Cool. So the file's back here in Lightroom. Now, normally what I'll do is once the file is back in Lightroom, I'll label the file as a red label to remind myself that I've edited this file already. Okay, so now that we're back in Lightroom, first thing we have to do is just do some simple cropping. So normally I use 16:9 widescreen crop. And just reposition the aircraft so it's a little bit centered. Zoom out a bit. Yeah, something like this. This looks good. Okay. Alright, after this, I always go to clarity first to increase the clarity amount just to see the effects. Now clarity will bring up these kind of highlighted reflected details, which is really cool, but it will increase the shadow effect as well. So normally when I up my clarity, I will also select my shadows to the right to decrease the shadow amount. As you can see, it really brightens up the dark areas of this image and really brings out the reflections on the Airbus A350. Now sometimes shooting on a very bright sunny day, certain areas of the aircraft might become overexposed, especially on the top part of the fuselage. So what you could do is just select your highlights and then just lower it down a bit so that those overexposed areas could be recovered. Something like this. Show you again. Bring this down to about -40. Now remember, all of these settings, it changes from image to image. This is not a fixed number. All of these values differ depending on the image and depending on the conditions of the day that you're shooting in. Like some of these numbers will not work if the image is shot on a very dark and gloomy day. Anyway, carrying on. Up the contrast a little bit, don't do it too much. Increase the white values, decrease the black values, and maybe just up vibrancy a little bit. And saturation up just by a tad bit as well. Well, as you can see, this white area is still a bit too overexposed. I'm just going to lower it down just a little bit more and increase the shadows up just a tiny bit. Not bad. Okay, so something like this. Okay, the next thing I would like to do is the gradients for the background. So use the gradient filter, drag it down to somewhere about midpoint, and lower the exposure for this gradient filter up, down to about almost 1 exposure to 1.25. This will really darken it a bit. Yeah, see? It really darkens this area. But of course, it also darkens the aircraft. Now, the latest version of Lightroom has something called range mask, which allows you to do either color masking or luminance masking. How this works? How this works is quite simple. Select color masking and then select the color picker tool, and then just go about selecting the areas that you want to darken, the color areas that you want to darken. And in this case, Lightroom would sense, the particular blue channel that you want to darken and just ignore everything else. So to show you more clearly the effect of the range mask tool, ta-da! So it darkens only the areas that your color picker selected. So for example, if you want to darken maybe the purple, if you select that, it will bring it down as well. But ignoring everything else. So see, the yellow wasn't touched, or I only want to decrease the yellow, for example. If I click that, it will decrease the gold channel and the yellow channel. So this tool actually is very, very useful, but you have to do it very carefully and don't overdo it, because sometimes these effects just don't, if it's too drastic, it doesn't really look too realistic. So yeah, I'm just doing this just to show you as an example. Right now I'm just going to bring up the value back again to about minus 1.82. Yeah, about maybe minus 2. Something like this. Cool. Okay, and then I'm going to bring up to about here. So it's a very nice smooth gradient, nothing too drastic. And then I'll do an opposite gradient from the bottom to lighten it up a bit. Just a tad bit, not too much. So roughly like this. Okay, now I'm seeing some haloing effects along the wingtip, tail, landing gears. This is normally caused by high amounts of clarity. So personally, what I would do is I'll take the brush tool, sorry, too big a radius, select mask overlay, show mask overlay next one, and then I'll just go over the areas that I find to have too much of a halo effect. Sorry, it's too white. Zoom into 2 and just run the brush over. Okay, so that's done, and then maybe around the landing gear. Now this kind of halo effect seems to be very obvious just around landing gear areas, wingtips especially. Yeah, so just take a brush tool, go over these areas, just around the edges. These areas in the edges as well, just like that. Okay. And if I'm right, the nacelle is fine, but the front landing gear as well, see? It's okay if the brush eats into these, it's fine. Oh crap, deactivated the brush. Alright, so select the brush. Alright, now turn off the show selected mask overlay. Go to your clarity for the brush tool and then bring it down. Drag it to the left to compensate for the halo caused by the clarity effect for the entire image. Well, normally an inverse number of the clarity levels that you put should do the trick. Maybe a bit less, so about minus 35. So, as you can see, the halos are a lot less obvious now that you've done that. Just to show, this is what it's like with the minus clarity brush that I used, and this is without. Without. So I kind of like the amount of compensation that it does. It really helps in releasing those very annoying halos that come out from overusing the clarity tool sometimes. This is too much. Maybe back to 40. That's about 45. Okay. So you can use your own judgment and see what works best. Okay, so one of the last steps is split toning. Oh wait, before that, if you zoom in here, you can see these green highlights. Yeah. Well, this is because this image was shot from Changi Business Park, and the plane was flying over trees and grass, which caused this kind of green reflective highlights to come out. It's annoying for myself. Some photographers like it. I personally don't. I like to keep the aircraft as clean and as clean as possible. So what I would do is I would use the HSL, highlight the hue, saturation, and luminance tool, and just roughly see what color channel these colors are on, judging by this is on green. Okay, so what I'll do is I will just select the green channel and drag it down to minus 100, which basically desaturates all of the green colors on this image. See? A lot cleaner. You don't get that weird green hue that's coming from the bottom of the plane. With, without, with, without. Yeah, so cool. Yeah. Almost done. So now I'd like to add a slight hue, hue to the shadows. So what I'll do is I'll apply the JCOS toning color pack that I downloaded from my Adobe courses quite some time ago. So I'll just select the sepia tool, the sepia setting, to give the shadows a bit of a sepia tone and reduce that saturation value down to about 25 of it. Okay, so we're almost done, but right now I feel maybe the tail is a little bit dark, so I'd like to use the brush tool again, and this time select it for dodge lightening. What I would like to do is lighten the logo of the tail just a little bit, and maybe some of the highlights here. Okay, so just a quick recap to show you the before and after image of before editing and after editing. So go back to library view. Okay, full screen. Wow, computer is slow today. Okay, so this is the final completed image, and this was what it was before. Yeah, sorry I couldn't get the precise before and after view because we actually did some cropping, so the Lightroom just shows it at its maximum size. So basically from this to this, yeah. Well, thank you all for your time, and again, if you have any tips or any kind of recommendations or feedback to give me, please feel free to leave it in the comment sections below. And this is Malcolm signing off. Thank you for your time and good night.